Sam Malone, never a doubt.
Never.
Never a doubt.
Uh-uh.
Nothing but confidence,
Yep.
never questioning any moment kind of win against the Dallas Cowboys in week 9. 8-1, sit the birds, and feels pretty good right about now. It is the Cat Country 96 Birds recap. It's brought to you by Miller Lite, the official beer sponsor of the Philadelphia Eagles, and by Banco Beverage Company with Sam Malone. I'm Kevin Crockett, bringing you this thing. And yeah, what are your it's interesting because I think if we've kind of gone week by week and we've said, well, if I told you after week 6 it would be 5-1, and then if I
Yeah.
told you after week 7 it would be 6-1. So here we are after 9 weeks, 8-1. How you feeling there, Sam?
Same way I did last year after 8-1. But I have to add this to begin this. I think I predicted 23-21 birds.
That
So
sounds familiar. Yeah.
it wasn't too far off because I got a 23 right. Fortunately, that was for the Cowboys number. But anyway, feeling pretty good over 8-1. Feeling good, even better, Crockett, because the bye week is coming up. And
Yeah.
I don't care what anybody says, we can use this bye week as much as the players. 100%. I mean, it could, I mean, all right, maybe they can a little bit more. I'll give them that. Players, coaching staff, and Merrill Reese. You heard Merrill Reese is even losing his voice.
Mhm.
So this bye week couldn't come at a better time. We can watch some Sunday football and relax a little bit. I think we both agree the Cowboys probably will win. They play the Giants on Sunday, but we can just watch some football and relax a little bit, not worry so much, Crockett.
Yeah, it's the end of that game was tense because it felt like the Eagles were, especially on that last drive. I think the Cowboys went 60 yards in less than
Ugh,
30 seconds in the blink of an eye.
yeah.
And so you were just like, they're gonna give the game away.
Oh, I know.
But they've been a bend but don't break. They were bend but don't break quite a bit last season.
Yeah.
They're bend but don't break this time around as well. Yeah, I would agree with you. The bye week comes at a great time because I think there's still a lot of things that need to be figured out in the secondary. And I keep finding myself every week because of how many different rotations they've had in that secondary
Yeah.
that I keep kind of being like, okay, let's give them a little grace period. Let's give them a little grace period. You're going to get everybody rested. You're going to get everybody back. I'm interested to see what it's like adding Bradley Roby back
Yeah.
into that secondary, a veteran presence. Maybe as you're rotating the Eli Ricks and you're rotating the Sidney Browns and the Mario Goodriches in and out, that's a lot of guys who haven't played in the NFL just yet. And so to just get maybe that veteran secondary, you obviously ironed a lot of that out in the safety spot with Kevin Byard in that trade. Maybe you get Bradley Roby back off of that shoulder injury this week going into Kansas City, and you can just kind of see they're getting torched in the back end.
Yeah.
They've given up. Dak had 374 and 3 touchdowns. Somehow, if all he did was play the Eagles, he'd be a Hall of Famer.
Right.
They definitely have to get that back end figured out, and hopefully a little bit of rest and relaxation can do that for them.
Yeah, a little concerning is that last drive as we stick on that. One of the things that really that I noticed was they didn't hit anything in the middle of the field. They were doing sidelines. They were getting out of bounds. Problem free. So they didn't really take much time off the clock, as you were talking about earlier. And just the way picking apart, it was very, very concerning. And then all of a sudden, some of the pressure started developing, and there were some mistakes made by the Cowboys on offense as well, leading down to the field. But that does, and they're two corners. They have to fix what's going on. I don't look. Maybe they each lost a step. I don't know, or a half a step. But we need better play from the corners. Slay. There's just the second half of the season, the corners have to step it up. In my opinion, I mean, Slay's not had a bad year. The other guy has. We won't even mention his name right now. But there's just been something off a little bit about the corners this season. I don't know. Again, maybe they lost a half a step or something.
I think well, you saw the change when CeeDee Lamb was torching him early, that Darius Slay kind of followed him around the field. When we were talking last week, I had mentioned that wouldn't be a surprise to me if they did that. And the Cowboys did exactly what we were talking about last week. When Eli Ricks was on the field, they had no problem trying to run the ball.
Yeah.
When Sidney Brown was on the field, they threw the ball in his direction and tried to make him make a play. They both ended up on CeeDee Lamb quite a bit, and we saw how that went. So the only thing that I could say is as you get this secondary a little more fine-tuned in the bye week, you get more veteran players there through the bye week and healthy. I wouldn't be surprised if Sean Desai, knowing that this is going on, doesn't start playing up a little bit more, not even necessarily man coverage, but it seems like quite a bit the Eagles are finding themselves well off of receivers, at least well off in the NFL standard, off of receivers and just giving them too much space
They are.
to
Yes.
just too much space. It's so will they get up a little more? Will they try to play man once that is established in the back end, that trust, that
Mhm.
understanding, because it's a lot to communicate. There have been, I don't know
Yeah.
what the number is now, we're at 16, 17, some number of defensive backs that have been in that secondary this season so far, and that's not easy. And so are they able to kind of go into this bye week, be healthy, get better? If they're playing with injured knees, ankles, hips, back, whatever it might be, that could be slowing them down a little bit, kind of recoup a little bit. And again, I think when you go out and you get Bradley Roby, and they didn't make any other trades at the
They
trade
didn't.
deadline,
No.
so they obviously think that Roby could be a player that can help them. That's when I think I'll start to be critical. They go into this stretch of games, obviously, against a really good set of quarterbacks coming
Sure
up.
they did.
Can they buckle up? They can't. You keep giving up 377, 350, all touchdowns and no picks through the air. It's going to burn you at some point. And if that problem is going to happen, it feels like
Yeah.
this is the stretch of the schedule where it might.
That's another good point. No turnovers at all. Well, I guess the final play of the game technically was a turnover.
Technically was a turnover,
Yeah,
yes.
technically it was a fumble, but the entire game just and give credit to Dak again. He was on target most of the game, but no turnovers, no tip passes. Maybe there may have been one or two, if that. But yeah, they do need to strengthen it up, as we're both talking about. And so you look at this stretch, which you just brought up, and you have that. I look at this more. Uh, okay, the Chiefs game is going to be a really tough game. They're both coming off of a bye week. I think the Chiefs have a bye week, right?
I think you're right. Yeah.
Okay. Both coming off. It's going to be in Kansas City. It's going to be tough. That's good. But you look at the stretch, and then they have Buffalo, who's not necessarily as good as maybe they were earlier in the season. That's a home game. That's another winnable game. So for the next three, if we look at this for the next four, and dare we say, I mean, I hate to say 2-2, but if they go 2-2 in these next, I think you have the Niners in there as well. And you, is that enough? 2-2 in these next 4-game stretch with the schedule that the Cowboys have coming up, which is a lighter schedule.
Well, the Cowboys have some games in there that they have to win too, no doubt. But yeah, I think you're going to end the season Giants, Cardinals, Giants.
Yeah.
Which puts you in a very good position to have you're 2.5 games up going into the
Yeah.
games this weekend on Dallas. So that definitely gives you a little bit of breathing room. Yeah, I think too, you throw the Seattle game on the
Sure.
road in there, you throw the
Yeah.
Dallas game on the road in there. If you can come out of that 3-3, come out of that 4-2, I
Yeah.
think you're setting yourself up in a pretty good position to take advantage. Again, the Cowboys, yes, while their schedule is not as much of a gauntlet as the Eagles have coming up, they've still got some games. They still have to play against Seattle at home. They still have to go on the road to Buffalo. They go on the road to Miami. They host the Lions the second to last week of the season on Monday Night Football. So, they've got a pretty good stretch of games themselves. We mentioned the Eagles stretch. They literally go Seattle, Philadelphia, at Buffalo, at Miami, and Detroit, all playoff caliber teams right in there. So, I think the Eagles just have to keep the pace, just keep their heads above water. I don't think they have to go 5-0. That's terrific. 6-0, that's stretch terrific.
Oh my gosh.
But I also think, the Cowboys are going to hit their own stretch of games. Really, the big concern and I don't know if the concern's the right word, but are you able to keep a pace ahead of Detroit through this stretch of games? Because that NFC North, obviously not a great division. Detroit, after that shellacking they took from Baltimore a couple of weeks ago, seems like they've kind of leveled themselves out a little bit with that win against Las Vegas last week. Their schedule, I'm trying to pick up their schedule here as we're scrolling through. Their back end of games they are at the Chargers. They go Chicago, Green Bay, New Orleans, which is, maybe the winner of the NFC South, maybe at Chicago, Denver, Minnesota, Dallas, Minnesota. So, Detroit to me kind of seems more like the team that could be that, we're ahead of the Cowboys, but man, if we stumble a little bit, all of a sudden you're going to kind of forget that Detroit's there, and maybe they're the team that you have to worry about and try to play catch up with in the NFC.
Yeah, that's a team now. You know, for many years it hasn't been that big of an issue, but you don't want to go to Detroit in the playoffs and face the Lions in Detroit. Just throwing that out there. That's something I don't think anybody wants to be a part of that. But yeah, I think at being at 8-1 and the best record in the NFC, I think they're the best record in the NFL. The Eagles are.
Yeah, they
So
are. Yes.
yeah, so just keep playing your style of ball. Get the running game more involved, and as we get into the colder months, as we always bring up every live one of these, and we always talk about running the football. But I think if they do what they have to do, maybe they don't really have to worry about Dallas as much or Detroit as much, and obviously they will because this is the NFL and we know how it works.
Sure.
But just do what you have to do to win the games. And with DeAndre Swift too, I think this bye week comes at a good time for Swift as well, and the rest of the backs. I think they're going to pick up the running game in the second half of the season, especially with Dallas Goedert injured. We didn't even touch that yet. That can hurt for the next couple of weeks, probably 3 weeks because of the bye instead of 4, or is it 4 game weeks? I'm not sure what it is, but that's going to hurt a little bit too.
Yeah, I think he's one of those players that like if you've got, not that you want to see anything happen to your wide receivers, but when your 3 and 4 wide receivers are Olamide Zaccheaus and Julio Jones, and you still
Yeah.
have Devontae Smith, you feel like, okay, we can get by a few weeks. If it is Swift who goes down, we've seen Kenny Gainwell, we've
Yeah.
seen Boston Scott take care of that business. Rashad Penny ran the football a little bit last week. You
Mhm.
don't worry so much. The offensive line, I mean, they've had to rotate their right guard throughout the season, all season so far. Not Tyler Steen's best game ever, but he's a rookie, and I thought played. You got Micah Parsons and a really good defensive Lawrence, those guys across from you there. I thought he played. Yeah, which was huge.
Yeah.
But tight end, man, there's a big drop off, in my opinion, between Dallas Goedert, Grant Calcaterra, and Stoll. And that's only because Calcaterra is a little bit more of a receiving tight end, and Stoll's a little bit more of a blocking tight end. Where obviously Dallas Goedert is both of those things, and not only both of those things, but great at both of those things. That is certainly going to be an issue that they're going to have to deal with going in these next few games. And of course, but we mentioned that. We haven't even mentioned, oh, by the way, Jalen Hurts, who's been playing on that knee. Who knows what's going on? You're never going to hear it from him.
No.
But certainly he took that hit in that game where slow to get up. Everybody kind of held their breath, and then he just goes in there and does what he does so well so far this season and just delivers. He's just been delivering all season long. But I'm sure he could use the bye week. So it's going to be nice to just do a little bit of watching this weekend and not so much. I don't want to say worrying, because worrying is not the right word, but cautiously watching when the Eagles aren't on. Which is great. Teresa checks in and she says, "Go Cowboys." I want to tell Teresa, go ahead and look at the recap from Sunday and that Eagles Cowboys game. Hey, a familiar face lands in a new place yesterday. As Carson Wentz finds his way to the Rams. Wasn't too surprised by that. I actually was surprised it took as long as it did. The Rams have just, when their starting quarterback has been out, whether it's been Stafford and even going back to Jared Goff a little bit, their backup quarterback situation has just been not getting a whole lot of production from those guys there. Sean McVay, a John Gruden disciple, John Gruden, who's been working with Carson Wentz this offseason. We'll see if Carson actually does get a little bit of time. He is the backup there. He's not going to jump right in and start games, but just interesting to see if, he's Sean McVay, I'm sure, knows a lot about him from the draft process, going back to, when you're studying quarterbacks and you're an offensive coordinator and, you're looking at those guys as potential guys who could come in. I think at that point he was still in Washington. But you're looking at those guys about who could come in and possibly be your quarterback. So I'm sure he's done a ton of homework on Carson Wentz. So it's going to be interesting, just interesting to see if he gets an opportunity this season and what he does with it, because if he waited this long for somebody to call, and we know the Jets went through their quarterback problems. We know the Cardinals have rotated through quarterbacks. We know Cleveland has had to deal with it's taken this long to get that phone call. This might be the last chance for him to go in and try to continue his career after this year.
Wouldn't be surprised if we see him a lot earlier. I know, they're still having issues with
Stafford, Matt
Stafford.
Stafford.
I almost said
Yeah.
golf. Yeah, with Stafford. But I have to tell you, watching the game Sunday with the Rams, it was kind of cool, and I was kind of rooting for Rippon a little bit, just because, the family,
Yeah.
with his dad being
Sure.
Mark Rippon and everything. It's like, oh, come on, he's not having that bad of a game just to watch it back and forth. He completed a couple nice balls here and there, but with the signing of Carson Wentz, they did release Rippon, so it is him. If there's any kind of issue with Stafford, we may see Carson Wentz on Sunday. Who knows?
And that's the thing. To me, they, right now they're 3-6 in LA, but the Vikings are currently the 7 seed at 5-4. You rattle off these teams and anything can happen. Minnesota, Washington, Atlanta, Tampa Bay, Green Bay, and the Rams. I
Yeah.
mean, any one of those teams could, make a case to get to 7-10 and possibly get in the playoffs if that's
Yeah.
what it's going to take. So
Yeah.
it'll be fascinating. Definitely something to watch, but certainly a name that we know quite well around here. So just wanted to touch on that for a second. It is the Cat Country 96 Birds Recap. It's brought to you by Miller Lite, the official beer sponsor of the Philadelphia Eagles, and by Banco Beverage Company. So Kansas City coming off their bye. They get a win in Germany against Miami. For a secondary that hasn't been playing that great, maybe a good time to catch Kansas City because their offense isn't exactly rolling very much right now. So kind of a tale of the game to me is going to be decided on which side of the ball shows up. If it's Kansas City's offense or it's Philadelphia's defense, and can you get turnovers? You brought it up earlier. It almost doesn't even it's not like they're dropping interceptions, or you mentioned tip balls earlier. Like, they're nowhere near close to interceptions on a lot of these plays. So you go back to Slay in the game against, which game was that, where Slay got the pick right at the goal line? Miami. It kind of feels like those opportunities just haven't been very big in the secondary. I don't know how many of those you're going to get from Patrick Mahomes, but man, if you get them, you better make sure you cash them in.
Yeah, this is something that, I think Travis Kelce may have had his lowest yardage.
Yeah. I mean, they went full Bill Belichick. This guy's not going to do it. Make your receivers do it. And credit to the Chiefs. Their receivers, who have been a bit inconsistent throughout the season, showed up on Sunday morning against Miami.
And the Eagles know that they're going to show up a couple Monday nights from now too. So that, and you made a good point. Eagles defense better show up. This isn't anything. It's tough to play Kansas City in Kansas City to begin with. Primetime football, of course. Eagles have to, again, seems like we say this every week, but the Eagles have to play their best football of the week to do this. Now, the good news is it is an AFC team, and this time of year I always start thinking about don't lose to the NFC teams, tiebreakers. So, in worst case, if they lose, it's to the AFC team. That's you're not going to say fine, but it is what it is. But yeah, you got to go out there, and they're going to be both teams are going to be fired up. Both teams, what's cool about this too? Both teams coming off of a bye, they're both going to be, you would assume, 100% when it comes back from coming from the bye. I'm not saying the Cowboys are, So I think this is going to be a really good game. We know Andy Reid's track record coming off of a bye, going back to the Eagles, very, very good on that. So, we'll see. This will be a fun one to watch. It's too bad it's late at night. We're still going to watch it, but it is what it is.
It is indeed what it is. Going to be a fascinating game. We'll see if with an even turf, as long as there's no rain on Monday Night Football, if the Eagles defensive line can maybe make an impact that they weren't able to make for whatever reason you want to say that was in the Super Bowl. Can they get to Patrick Mahomes? And to me, that's the turnovers, the inability to generate turnovers. And it's not so much that it's a lack of a pass rush. It's just been, we saw Brandon Graham, those plays at the end of that game. Sacks are such huge plays. I get that it's not turning the ball over, so you're up, but man, you set teams up in second and long, third and long. It's so hard to recover from that. If they can generate a pass rush, that's going to help that back end so much.
Yeah, we'll see. Hey, I'm going to throw this out to you. I think it's interesting. Let's say, for example, that Stafford can't go anymore this season for whatever reason. Do the Rams sign Nick Foles to back up Carson Wentz?
We're going to be doing a Cat Country 96 recap in 20 years, and you're still going to find a way to try to get Nick Foles on somebody's roster.
I know. Just a thought.
Well, that's a good spot to wrap it up. I
think.
It is. Okay. It's a Cat Country 96 Birds Recap. It's brought to you by Miller Lite, the official beer sponsor of the Philadelphia Eagles, and by Banco Beverage Company. I think we're going to do this thing next week, too. We can certainly look at standings and get ready for Kansas City and all that stuff. Ready. So we'll definitely be back with it next week leading up to the game against Kansas City. And then I think we're out and about on the 21st, recapping the game against Kansas City on Tuesday. So we'll have that information and post all that information on where, when, and how you can come out and join us with Miller Lite and all their great swag that they've got for the Eagles this season. So
sounds good.
All right, Sam. Until next week, go Birds, buddy. I'll be